Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news this Sunday morning. And then you look at Trump and you see an entire network system, an entire political party, but in an entrenched political party entrenched within society. You have a judge whose husband had to recuse herself. In one of the biggest cases we've seen in decades, well, really ever in terms of financial crimes. And she had to recuse herself, a judge in New York. So then you have $250 million out on bail. It's not even his money. Now that it was his money, it wasn't worth billions. And these are the wonderful people, like the adults are in the room. Right? The adults are in charge, the adults. They're the ones. FTX invasion in Europe, inflation 7 to 8%. Another recession next year. Oh, but they're responsible, wonderful people who love democracy, and then they railroad Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. And 2 years ago, and then they're changing the format because they can't continue to cheat him in Iowa. Bernie Sanders is always gonna win Iowa. But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel, and then they did that 2 primaries in a row. The greatest liars are the ones who complain about Trump lying about crowd size, and they lie about FTX or Hunter, and you think about the money flow. Hunter, hundreds of millions of dollars. FTX with over $1 billion according to Elon Musk. Private servers with top secret intel siphoned outside the US government when Trump did these things. Trump is not going to get indicted because he didn't tell anyone to commit a crime in January, just like Democrats didn't tell 14,000 people to get arrested or commit $1 to $2 billion in property damage. Although I agree with why people are demonstrating. I agree with the cause. But that whole summer of that year before January, you had $1 to $2 billion in property damage. So, and 19 lives lost and 14,000 arrests. And every day, every night, clashes between law enforcement and demonstrators who, at that moment, weren't peaceful, or in those instances weren't peaceful, but you said CNN fiery, but mostly peaceful. It's a meme now. You have these people who are in front of a building, set ablaze. And it's fine. It's mostly peaceful, it's fine. But you're not going to have, if you're the Democratic Party. We're not going to have Twitter or Twitter files. Part 9 came out, we'll talk about that. They're not going to have Twitter. Government agencies are not going to be able to, along with Twitter executives, silence conservative voices. And that's exactly what took place. Simply pointing to when the Twitter files 1 through 9.2 amends, this very corrupt relationship between government agencies and former Twitter officials. The rebuttal has always been by, oh, well, it happened. So therefore it was okay. It was legal. There was nothing wrong with it. Of course there's going to be the Bureau is just informing Twitter of people that broke guidelines. Well, that's not what these agencies are for. Government agencies don't exist to ensure that Twitter guidelines are addressed. There's a political motive. What's the political motivation of these government agencies? What was the political motivation of government agencies and Twitter to suspend the New York Post account? It wasn't because they were, so it's not national security, by the way, to obsess over material that is true. If, like the DNC emails, were the truthful email, the actual emails of Democratic Party officials that show that Bernie Sanders has been cheated. Democrats have marketed that into, well, another country wants you to know. It was an operation by another country to watch and who wants you to know that the primary is a complete facade with Democrats? Oh, don't you know what other country wants you to know? It's called propaganda. You have to be stupid to believe it. But a lot of people who they're very intelligent, that they just lack wisdom, and they just don't really care about logic and what's obviously taking place. Another country doesn't always want you to know what's bad for Democrats. See, whenever something is good, incriminating with Democrats was Hunter's laptop. Well, it could have been an effort by the Kremlin, because they like Trump. There's no evidence that they like Trump any more than they did President Obama, who came in with a Russian reset. Okay. President Obama in 2012 told Romney the 80s want your foreign policy back? The 80s want their foreign policy back. He was making fun of Romney. The Republicans were the hawks pertaining to that country. Then Democrats turned on a dime the entire political establishment. Trump's impeached because an ellipsis he didn't commit a crime, but graft and bribery with Hunter and Joe, those are crimes. private servers with top secret intel. Yeah, that's a crime right there. They're not going to have Twitter silencing conservatives, the New York Post, they're not going to have FTX $1 billion. They're not going to have the House of Representatives. Now, they still have essentially state parties in Arizona and Georgia that needs to be addressed by Trump and or by DeSantis, and then there has to be an olive branch. Détente, some communication between the RNC and the state parties. Okay, because there are, like I said, there are no never Bidens, but there are too many still never Trumps, never Trump Republicans. And again, these never Trump Republicans would rather have a Democrat in the Oval Office than Trump. And then, some significant news, the Democrat-led Ways and Means Committee, and Congress has leaked former President Donald Trump's taxes to the American public after working hard to obtain them over a 6-year period. Now I want to go over what we know so far about Trump's taxes, insight from experts, Trump's aggressive response and demand that the Republican-led House investigate Biden, his family and his taxes, and much more. Now, ever since Democrats got their hands on Trump's tax filings, they've had a team of CPAs and accountants and experts combing through them with a fine-tooth comb. We only have 1 week of information coming from this group. But there are a few key pieces of information that have come out. First, it appears Trump's taxes are insanely complex, even an entire team in a week of daily going through the taxes. They are saying that this is a spider web of complexity that even they haven't been able to fully break down. Now this is likely because Trump and his companies manage hundreds of LLCs, dozens of properties, hotels and golf courses all around the world. And then ultimately, after all the remaining deductions have been removed, all the LLCs, S Corp, C Corps have been gone through, ultimately, whatever's left rolls onto Donald Trump's shoulders to pay those final federal and state taxes. Now, the next thing we see is because of the complexity of his returns, the IRS handled Trump's tax situation with velvet gloves, meaning they didn't really know how to handle it because it was so complex. Now many of the IRS are not even knowledgeable enough to manage an audit of his taxes, because it would require going so deep. Now, just imagine if the Trump family were to be audited, what's going to happen? They're going to immediately have an entire team of CPAs and an entire team of attorneys working with the IRS. And so because of this and the complexity, it appears that they just didn't do something like a deep dive on the Trump tax situation. So now Democrats are asking, is the IRS really this unprepared to deal with billionaires, not just Trump, but all billionaires in their complex tax filings? Or did the IRS show bias and favor towards Trump? Now, the IRS is not necessarily known for being pro-Republican or pro-Democrat. In fact, a few years ago, it was proven that they were specifically targeting conservative groups. So it would actually lean towards them being anti-conservative, according to what I've been reading and researching. Now, after all this, it also was learned that during former President Barack Obama's terms as president, that he was audited a couple of times. But the IRS admitted that his taxes were very simple, because Obama owned very little assets and no businesses because he was a career politician. And so they're saying, listen, you can't say that we're being biased because here was simple tax filings versus extremely complex tax filings. So again, whether the IRS showed bias, or unpreparedness, or lack of desire or courage to go after these complex returns, a committee is going to have to decide that. I'm just letting you know, from multiple sources, what's going on here. Now Trump paid very little in taxes. That is one thing that came out, compared to what most Americans would imagine a billionaire pays. In 1 year he only paid $750. Now, Trump said this means he is smart, and has people around him that understand the tax code, and that he openly admits he uses the tax code to his advantage just like all wealthy people and wealthy politicians. However, from the first week of diving into the taxes, this team of CPAs and accountants have deduced that Trump doesn't pay much taxes, because he has so many business losses and massive amounts of write-offs and carry-forward losses. So right now, they've not said that there's anything that looks illegal or fraudulent. He just happens to get a lot of write-offs because of the way the tax code is built. It was also learned that Trump has given each of his children large loans to start businesses or buy properties. The report showed that children have paid back those loans and even paid interest on those loans. But some Democrats are questioning whether Trump should have gifted this money, so the IRS could tax it. Or if it's allowed to lend money to your children and have them pay it back with interest. So far, there's been no calling him out for not paying interest on the loans, or taxes on the interest he earned from these loans. So again, not really anything here, except for that he did give large loans to his own children. The returns also show that Trump donated $21 million worth of land to the state government of New York. There's nothing illegal about this. And he had to part with the land. So he did have to give up a large amount of land in the state of New York. But because of that, the state of New York granted him a $21 billion write-off. Now, this is more than most Americans make in 10 lifetimes. So it's a huge amount of money that they gave him. But it was the state of New York that gave him the write-off. He didn't just invent it himself. Right. So far, it's been shown that Trump has paid about $1.8 million in taxes during this 6-year period, and $1.6 million in foreign taxes to other countries. So he's paid well. Over $3 million in taxes from just what they've reviewed. Going forward. Now. Again, that's Trump's personal tax return. That has nothing to do with his property taxes, business taxes, anything like that. So these are the supposed bombshells. According to Politico and CNN, I really tried to study left-leaning media more than right-leaning media, because I wanted to see the dirt. But one CNN reporter was shocked to find out that Trump had paid more taxes than what he expected, versus what he had avoided. For example, this reporter said in 2015, he paid $641,931 in taxes, $750 in 2016, $750, in 2017, $999,466, in 2018, and $133,445, and 2019. But then 20 cents 20. Now, CNN and Politico had no details on why he only paid 20 cents 20 while paying nearly $1 million while president in 2018. But one report did mention that Trump's net worth had dropped by $1 billion while serving as president. And so there may have been write-offs that he used, and that's why there's $0 in taxes. So again, left-leaning news seem to be very focused on him only paying $750. While right-leaning media didn't even point out the million he paid in 2018, but instead focused on Democrats leaking a former president's taxes and making this a political weaponization of the IRS. So I'm not sure more is expected to come out after Christmas. But many news sites are calling this a nothing burger, where he paid more taxes than most humans make in a lifetime just during these 5 or 6 years, and that he paid no taxes in some years because of excessive write-offs. But I'll let you decide. I really did try to go from both sides of the political aisle, with a greater focus on like Politico and CNN that are obviously anti-Trump, because I wanted to find the bombshells, but their biggest shock was that he had paid more than what they had expected. Trump then released a video this morning saying, "If you're going to come after me, then it's only appropriate that you go after President Biden and his family's taxes to expose whether they have been corrupt or cheated the federal government of taxes." Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.